Welcome to my channel. This 1940s dress features a keyhole neckline, a fuller skirt for swing dancing, and hip pockets cleverly tucked behind a front gathering detail. The tutorial uses a combination of flat patterning and draping methods to achieve this period look. Check out my Patreon in the description below for a written guide for this tutorial and options for private tutoring in CLO3D. Let's get started. The first thing we need to do is to get some measurements from our avatar. So I'm going to go to the Edit Measure Avatar tool in the 3D toolbar. And the first one I want is the waist, and that's 24 inches. So if I just click on any of these dotted lines, it gives me the measurement. And then I need to calculate 1/4 of the waist plus a 1/4 inch ease. So 24 divided by 4 is 6 plus 0.25 for ease, which is 6.25. And I have these calculations in the description for reference. All right, and then I need the same thing, but for the hip. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the hip. And this is 37. I'm going to go ahead and run that up to 38. So I need 1/4 38 inches plus 2 inches. So 1/4 38 is 9.5, and then plus 2 is 11.5, and that is that measurement. All right, the next two are like distance measurements between the waist and the hip, and then the hip and the knee. So I'm going to need to get the basic tape measure. If I click and hold on this icon over here, and then I can go to basic tape measure in parentheses avatar. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn to the side, and I'm going to measure from the waist to the hip. And then I'm just going to double click to finish that line. So that's 10.3. And then I'm going to measure from the hip to the knee, about right there. That's 15.5. And then that's all we need. We just need those measurements. All right, now that we have our base measurements, we can go ahead and start drafting the skirt. So I'm going to go to the 2D window now, and I'm going to use the S hotkey to pull up the rectangle tool. And then with this tool selected, I'm just going to click anywhere in the 2D window, and a dialog box will open up. For the width, we want to have that 1/4 waist plus ease measurement. So for me, that was the 6.25. And then for the height, I want that distance between the waist and the hip, which is 10.5. And then we can go ahead and click OK. All right, this pattern we just drafted, I'm going to go ahead and go to a translucent surface really quick. So this pattern that we just drafted, now you can see that this will be 1/4 of the skirt. Here at the top, that's going to be the waist measurement. And then this line right here is going to be the hip line. I'm going to go ahead and label some points on here just to help us follow along what needs to be done. All right, now we're ready to go ahead and add some fullness. This will be the left side of the skirt, so I went ahead and moved it over here as well. All right, to add fullness, we're going to go to the fullness line tool. So if you click and hold the fullness point tool in the 2D toolbar, you can find the fullness line tool. So go ahead and click that. And then we're going to click point A and then point B, and you can see we're selecting this whole top line here. And then we're going to click point C, then click point D to select the whole bottom line. And now it's giving it automatically opens up a dialog box, and we want to go ahead and we want to leave the direction start. We can tell because we want the skirt to flare out this way because it's the left side of the skirt. And then we want this slash line length, which is the one down here. We want that to be our 1/4 hip plus 2 inch measurement. So that was 11.5. And then you can check to see that that is flaring. That looks like what we want. And then we can click OK. All right, we're going to go ahead and right click this bottom line with the Edit Pattern tool, or the Z hotkey. And then we're going to choose Offset Pattern Outline. This dialog box will open, and the direction we want to extend. The distance, we want it to be that hip to knee measurement, but we want to add 2 inches. So that was 15.5. We're going to make that 17.5 inches. Oh, whoa, that's 175 inches. 17.5 inches. Number of offsets should be 1. We don't want to create an internal line, so we're going to leave that unchecked. And then for side segment type, we want this to be extend, because we want to just basically extend this line out and extend this line out like we were using a long ruler just to lengthen that skirt. And that looks good to me. So let's go ahead and click OK. And that will create points E and F, which I will label now. All right, this next set of steps, we're just creating reference points for details that we will add later. So rather than doing a bunch of math, we're going to use the split segment tool to divide segments equally, and then we're going to just convert the points that we don't want into curve points. So let me show you what I mean. So we're going to go ahead and use the Add Point Split Line tool. So that is the X hotkey, and that is up here in the 2D toolbar. If you click and hold on Edit Pattern, you can find Add Point Split Line. And with that tool selected, we're just going to right click on different lines and divide up our segments. So the first point we're going to add is point 1, and that's going to be between A and B. I'm going to just right click that line AB, and then I'm going to choose Uniform Split. And I actually want this to be divided into fifths. So I'm going to choose number of segments 5 and then click OK. Now the point that we're actually going to use is this one here. It's the one that's 2 in. So we'll label that one 1. So I'm going to go ahead to my annotate tool 1, and then we'll put him right there. And then the next step is we're going to add those same 5 points along the bottom. So go back to the split line tool and then right click this line E to F, uniform split that into 5 segments just right there, and then click OK. And then it's not the first or second one that we added, it's the same kind of third one. We're going to call that one point 2. Point 3 is on line AC, so I'm going to go ahead and go back to the split line tool, right click, and this time we're just going to do a uniform split with only 2 segments. So we can go ahead and click OK. Okay, we don't actually need any of these extra points that we created when we were splitting these segments. So let's go to the Edit Pattern tool, or the Z hotkey, and I'm just going to shift click all of these points that we're not going to use. And then I'm going to right click one of them and say Convert to Curve Point. And now it won't be in the way, we won't get confused by them, but if we just deleted them, it would actually delete the curve in between. So that's why we need to convert them to a curve point, which we can still see if we go to our curve point tool. All right, this will be the base for our front pattern, but we can also at this point copy this pattern and then use it for our back pattern. So I'm going to go to the Transform Pattern tool, or the A hotkey, and I'm just going to right click this pattern and I'm going to ask it to be a symmetric pattern. I could just copy and paste, but I think it's easier for me to visualize working on one side of the body. So I'm just going to go ahead and click anywhere in the 2D window and paste. My annotations copied, but they're kind of everywhere, so I hope that's not super distracting. All right, now we want to right click that pattern, and this purple line right here says that they are linked. So if I change something on the front, it will change it to the back and vice versa. I don't want that anymore because I'm going to do different things to these patterns. So I'm going to right click this, either one of them is fine actually. And then I'm going to say remove linked editing. And then that purple line that connects them disappears, and I can edit both of these patterns independently. All right, so on the back pattern, we want to add a dart that will just create a much more tailored silhouette. So I'm going to go to the Z hotkey, the Edit Pattern tool, and I'm actually just going to right click our point 1 right here. That's where our dart's going to be. And I'm going to choose Add Dart with Fullness. And then it's asking me to click a segment to draw the slash line, and that's why I gave this other point down here, because I wanted to have a very, pleasing distribution of fullness. So I wanted it to be also divided into fifths at the bottom. So now I just have to click point 2. And it says select side to add the dart. I'm not going to choose the side that has the center back. That will be here because I want to keep that on grain. So I'm actually going to choose the side that has A3CE side. Click that side, and then it's showing me how much I want to slash this to add that dart in there. And I'm just going to go ahead, and while this is an option, right click And then I'm going to choose the dart should be 0.75 inches. The dart arm width will automatically give itself its own number. And then for length, let's choose 6 inches. That'll be a nice long smooth dart. And we can leave a shape dart cap selected. So go ahead and click OK. Right now it's asking me to click and drag curve point to smooth pattern. That's just showing, you know, how they're going to true that dart. But whatever they choose is usually pretty well done. So I'm going to go ahead and click or press enter. Okay, now we can go ahead and make symmetric copies of these for the other side. So I can just do Command or Control A, and then I can do Command or Control D, and the symmetric patterns with sewing will automatically pop up. So I just click somewhere in the 2D window, and there they are. The next step is just to sew these together. So I'm going to choose the actually the free sewing tool, which is the M hotkey. And I could do segment sewing, but because we have all of these points in here, it would be a lot of segment sewing. So I'm just clicking on B to F on the front, B to F on the other side of the front. Same with the back. Just clicking at the top and then at the bottom, clicking at the top, then at the bottom. And that is how these will sew together. And it's hard to tell in the 3D window if that's done correctly, but we'll go ahead and place these on our avatar by using Shift F. We'll make all of the arrangement points appear. And then if I go to the Q, select Move Q tool, I can go ahead and click these pattern pieces and place them onto the avatar. And remember, the ones with the darts go on the back. So let's see, that looks good. I'm going to space them out a little bit more. And then the ones without the darts are the front. So there we go. Nothing's colliding. So let's go ahead and simulate. All right, that's a very nice shaped little skirt. That feels very proportionate to her. Let's go ahead and stop simulation and move on to draping the bodice. So we're going to go to the 3D pen avatar tool. So not edit 3D pen, but right underneath it is 3D pen. Go ahead and click that. And we're just going to start draping with using our standard draping practice, which is we always mark out center front and center back first. So I'm just going to hold the Shift key on the keyboard, and that makes this purple guideline appear. I'm going to click somewhere around the neck, and then somewhere maybe around the waist down here, I'm going to double click, and that's my center front line. Moving to the back, I'm going to do the same on the back around the neck and then around the waist. You don't have to worry too much about it being, you know, perfect at this point, because we can always move these points around later. What's important is that you've held Shift and you've made a true center front and center back. All right, I'm going to start drawing in these detail lines. If you are a member of my Patreon, I have a chart that kind of maps out where all the lines should be, but if you're not, just go along with me for the ride. The first one is the neckline right here, so I'm going to go ahead and start by clicking on that center front line, and then I'm going to hold Control or Command right around this neckline, and while holding Control or Command, I'm going to click, and that's going to place a red curve point, and that'll just keep, that'll give me more control over where I am placing these points. And then I went ahead and ended it on that center back line, and that is my neckline. I'm going to continue with that same process now for the waist. So I'm going to click on this point, holding Command or Control around the side here, adding a guide point, and then ending on this last point over here. If you end on a line, you only need to click that line, but if you are ending like in space somewhere, you need to double click to end your line. All right, now let's do the arm's eye. So I like to start around the shoulder, add a curve point around the point right there, right when it starts to curve under the arm, one at the side seam, and then right as it's coming back up, adding one there as well, and then finishing at that same point. And we can always move those around later. All right, let's do a shoulder seam. I'm just going to connect these two dots that I conveniently placed there. That's my shoulder seam. And then same for the side seam. I'm going to connect my curve points with the straight line. All right, let's go ahead and add a front dart now. And I want this to end up being around where that point is, so that 1/5 mark, but I can always move it later. But I'm kind of imagining like 1/5 around the body so that it lines up to the point on the skirt. So I'm just going to start on the waist by clicking there. And then the key with the darts in CLO is to not extend over the bust point, because it will make that dart huge once you straighten those lines. So make sure you're not going over the fullness of the bust point, like even, backing away by an inch is a good practice. So we don't want to fully go to that point. And then same with the back. We actually can barely kind of see where that dart is there. So roughly that's where we want that dart to be in the bodice. And then we want to go to the fullness of the shoulder blade, but also backing away from that a bit. So maybe about right here looks nice. And there are two lines that make up the front detail seams. One of them extends from the this exact point right here. Let's put maybe a curve point here for reference, and then it goes all the way to the neck point. That's one of the lines. And then the other line that makes up the keyhole will start maybe around here, and then maybe has a curve point and then ends right there. So that's pretty cute, but let's go ahead and spend some time adjusting these. These are all the lines we need, and now we just want to make sure they look good before we flatten them. So I'm going to go to my Edit 3D pen tool and just start moving these around. I actually like where that one is. I know that I'm going to end up extending this shoulder later, so because of the shoulder pads, let's go ahead and move you here. The arms of the avatar are a little weird because they have all this extra flesh here that people don't typically have, so they can be kind of deceptive on the shapes of the arm size. Okay, go ahead and leave that. Okay, this one I did want to like cheat out a little bit more that way. I think that'll be much prettier. I think that all of this waistline I want to make sure is a little bit more even all the way around. It's kind of dipping at the back. And here, okay, that's not bad. And I can always true this on the patterns later too. Here we go. Okay, that's a good start. And then I think I want to lower this neckline too. All right, she doesn't look too bad. Let's see what happens when we flatten her out. Before we flatten, we're going to need to straighten the lines that we want to be straight, because if we just unwrap this now, CLO will just add curves wherever it wants. We need to tell it where to add curves. So we still have the Edit 3D pen tool, and I want to make sure we're right-clicking this center front line, flattening as straight line. We also want to grab the dart, and now I'm shift clicking. We want to grab the side seam, the back dart, the back line, and the shoulder seam. So these, including this center front seam, are all the seams that we want to be straight. You know what, just for fun, I'm going to click that one too. And that is going to determine which lines get curves. And it's a much more accurate unwrap to what we would expect if we had draped this in real life. All right, flattening a straight line. Looks good. We know that they're flattened because they are more bold. Great, let's go ahead and flatten this. So the flattening tool is underneath the 3D pen in the 3D toolbar. So if you click and hold 3D pen avatar, you have a flatten option. And we just want to, we can go ahead and do Control or Command A, make sure that everything is highlighted in yellow. If it's not, it's because you don't have closed shapes, and you need to go and see then which lines are not touching or intersecting. Or maybe you have 2 points that are really close together, but like actually aren't on top of each other. But it looks like mine is good, so I'm gonna go ahead and press Enter. And there are my pieces over here. Let's go ahead and go to the Transform Pattern tool and just arrange these so they're a little bit easier to see what's going on. So let's put you here because you'll sew to the skirt. We'll put you over here, and then you're here. And then this keyhole piece, we actually are just going to delete it because that's a little feature moment that we are not using. All right, so now that we have all of our patterns, let's go ahead and shift click to select them all, and then Control or Command D to make the duplicated other side with sewing. And then we do want to use the segment sewing tool to make sure that our center fronts and our center backs are sewn together. And then once that's done, everything else should be automatically sewn. You can go ahead and press simulate. I'm going to go ahead and do a tiny little free sewing seam to sew this little keyhole together really quick too. So even just a tiny little seam, like 1 point or 0.1 inches is fine. Okay, so now we need to start truing this bodice, fixing some of these curves, just generally making it a more well-made pattern, because it doesn't always spit it out perfect. We've got to then go ahead and true. So the first thing that I'm seeing here is this, the darts should be trued. The dart leg difference is like that one's 8.4 and that one's 8.5. So to do that, we're going to go to the Edit Pattern tool, or the Z hotkey, and I'm just going to shift click both of these dart legs here and here, and then I'm going to right click and choose Shape Dart Cap, and then that is going to be lengthening this other dart, which is great. I'm just going to go ahead and press enter, and that's a much prettier dart there. I'm going to go ahead and do the same on the front. Shift click to select both dart legs, right click the selection, Shape Dart Cap, enter. Now let's go ahead and sew the bodice to the skirt so we can see what work needs to be done on truing those seams. So we can actually use the segment sewing tool or the N hotkey, and because we tried to place this dart in alignment with this point, they should be pretty close. Actually, that's pretty good, 2.4 to 2.49. That's pretty good. We're going to sew those together. We're going to sew this together right here. So this side of that bodice, and that one is much more different. So we know we need to true that. And then the same on the back. We're going to go ahead and sew this side here, and then this side here, and go ahead and simulate. And although it's like, wow, look how great it looks, it's sewed together so well, we know that there's actually some issues here. So to address those, let's go ahead and activate Check Sewing Length, which is in the 2D toolbar right over here. And that's showing us which seams are not trued. Okay, so we've done pretty well, but we're gonna go ahead and need to fix this. So I actually really liked the balance because we drafted the skirt symmetrically. I like the balance that the skirt has. So let's true the bodice to the skirt. So if we go here and I go to the edit sewing tool, which is the B hotkey, it looks like there's a 0.4 inch difference here. So this one is 3.75 basically. Let's go ahead and right click this line with the edit pattern tool. So go ahead, right click, change length, and we want this length then to be the same as this one. So that was 3.75. Oh my gosh, 3.75. And then you can see it gives you an option which direction you want that to be taken out of. And I don't want to make the dart bigger. So I want to take that out of the end and then go ahead and click OK. And now those pieces are trued. Let's go ahead and do the same with this seam right here. So this is 3.7, basically 3.75 again. Let's go ahead and add that length here. Still have the edit pattern tool. I'm just right clicking, change length, 3.75. And again, if I choose start as the direction, it closes that dart, and I don't want that. I want it to be at the end so that it actually adds it to the side seam. And they go ahead and click OK. All right, that's much better. Very pretty. Let's go ahead and see what's happening with this side seam here. I think I want to click both of these and then bring them up until that line matches 8.8 like that. And then let's see what that looks like. Yeah, that looks really nice. So the hard thing is that I can't tell you what needs to be done to your pattern. You really have to use your eye and sensibility. But these are things that do develop over time. And if you really get stuck and you just need someone to look at your pattern, you can message me on my Patreon and I'm happy to look at your patterns. All right, so let's true this piece right here now. 8.6, 8.3. Okay, so I think that let's go ahead and just move this point over and then see what that does. So this is 8.65. Let's change length here. 8.65. And that just, I like that it's moving it that direction. I think that's right. And then go ahead and press OK. That's true. Let's see. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. Let's go ahead and check our strain to see if there's any strain on that keyhole, and it doesn't look like it. So let's go ahead and keep it. All right, before we're done truing at this stage, I want to look at some of these curves that the draping tool has created, the 3D pen has created. And some of them are a little chunky and a little kind of ugly. There's a little wobbly. A really cool trick that you can do to just make these curves much more beautiful is to go to the Z hotkey, right click align and choose optimize curve points. And then this is giving you a little sliding scale of like how many of those you want to take out. And I like to take out as many as I can. Like for example, I can actually get this curve down to 1 curve point and it's basically the same curve, but it's much smoother. Go ahead and click OK. And I'm just going to repeat that for all my other curves just to make them nice and beautiful. So this arm's eye right here, optimize curve points, sliding scale down. And I actually think we need it to cut in like pretty much that far. So I think that's about how many we can leave out for that to still happen. Go ahead and click OK. I wonder if there's still a little bumpy down there, but all right, how about here? Optimize curve points. And we can even get that down to 1 point. Great. This right here, 7. I think that this kind of honestly just be straight. So let's go ahead and take out all the curve points there. This neckline doesn't look too bad. Optimize curve points. Yeah, let's leave both of those in. And then the back. Great. And then we'll see what that looks like. That looks much cleaner. And then right here, yep, 2 is great for that one. And then here, and yeah, that one looks like 1 is all that one needs. Very pretty. Every time I've made this pattern, the keyhole has looked a little bit different. So that's very much something that has a lot of variation and is up to your personal taste, what it looks like. Okay, now let's add some shoulder pads. This is the 1940s, so we want to make sure we have a little bit more of a triangular type of waist-shoulder ratio. And to do that, we both need to add length to the shoulder seams and height to the shoulder seams. So let's start with the height. I'm going to go ahead and go to the Edit Pattern tool, and I'm going to right-click this back line, and I'm going to say Change Length. And whatever length is here, let's go ahead and add a 1/4 inch to it. So I'm about 8.75 inches. Let's just go ahead and just make that 9 inches. And then we want the difference to be in the shoulder. So whatever you need to choose to make it in the shoulder, this is the look that we want. And then go ahead and click OK. And then we want to do the same on the front pattern right here. Change length. This is the arm's eye on the front. So 7.1, that would probably be 7.325 is adding a 1/2 inch to there. Again, change this to the end so that the shoulder is heightened, and then click OK. And then we want to add a little bit of length to the shoulder. So let's see what we have right now. 3.8, change length. Let's add a 1/2 inch here. So that would be about 4.25. I know that's not technically accurate, but I like to round my measurements to whole numbers so that I can keep better track of them, because we're going to go ahead and add that same number over here. Offset pattern, or change length, 4.25. Oh my gosh, 3rd time, 0.25. And then again, we want to make sure that that length is added at this outside corner, not at the neckline, and then press OK. And then it looks like we've got a little bit more room for a shoulder pad right now. So you can see her shoulder seam is kind of floating off her right there. I'm going to go ahead and go to the library now, and I'm going to close out of here. Library, and we're going to go to hardware and trims. Then we're going to go to shoulder pad, and we're going to use female shoulder pad 4 millimeters, and just double click that. We want to add it, and you don't need to translate it at all. Just click OK. And we want to maintain current avatars, size, and pose. And then they just kind of appear vaguely here. Let's go ahead and click these while they're selected, and go ahead and drag them into place. This is a lot easier when your gizmo appears, but for some reason, sometimes my gizmo just doesn't appear, so I just make do with what I have. Okay, once you like where they're at, go ahead and right click and freeze. And then when you simulate, your dress will just learn how to live with that, with the new shoulder pad that's there now. Cute. Let's go ahead and make the sleeves now. I'm going to go ahead and close out of my library. I don't need it anymore. And now for the sleeves, they're just these little wing things. So I'm going to go ahead and use the ellipse tool, or the E hotkey. And I'm just going to click anywhere in the 2D window, and it's going to ask, we're going to type in a width and a height. Okay, so for the width, we actually need to know the length of our arm size. So I'm just in the Z edit pattern tool now, and I just clicked both of these arm size pieces, and the total looks like it's 16 inches. So that's the number we need. So I'm just letting Chloe do the math for me. What is the arm size that I need? It's 16 inches. Okay. So going back to my ellipse tool, clicking anywhere in the 2D window, I'm going to unlink these so that I can type in a width, which is 16. And for the height, let's go ahead and use 4 inches for everyone. You can adjust this for proportion if you would like, but let's go ahead and start with 4 inches. And then click OK. All right, this little sleeve is actually going to get sewn in at this side and then also at the back, and it's going to be finished by just folding it in half rather than having a separate hem. So let's go ahead and add an internal line to help Chloe fold this. So that's the G hotkey. I'm just clicking on one side of this ellipse, and then the other side I'm double clicking, and now there's a fold line, which helps because then there is geometry created along that line for it to fold on. And you can also help it by adding a fold strength of or a fold angle to it as well, but I think it'll work without it. So all right, now that she's drafted, we want to go ahead and sew her into the arm size. So with my segment sewing tool, I'm just going to sew this side of the sleeve to right here, and then this side right here. And if I right click my sleeve pattern and say superimpose side, oh, it just really put it underneath. All right, come out there. That looks right to me. And then I want to also sew this side of the sleeve using the freeze sewing tool, or the M hotkey, to this side of the sleeve. And that way it will fold in half. And when I simulate, I'm just going to go ahead and keep encouraging it, and it does want to fold on that line. Now, we know that these arm size aren't balanced. The back one is 8.8 inches and the front one is 7.1 inches. So I just want to go ahead and take this time to adjust this sleeve so that it actually is trued. You can see, check sewing length, that there are problems here. All right, so 7.1, let's change this side to be 7.1. And I'm just going to do that by going to the edit pattern tool, just selecting these 2 points, and then just moving them, holding shift until that line says 7.1, and then that one is trued, and then 8.8 on this side, just clicking and dragging to select both the internal line and the outside. 8.8. Great. And then go ahead and simulate, and that fits in there much nicer now. All right, now we can go ahead and copy this sleeve to the other side. So going to the transform pattern tool or the A hotkey, clicking the pattern, Control or Command D to duplicate, and we'll go ahead and move it over here for the other side. And it will automatically populate where it needs to be. We just simulate. All right, now it's time to add pockets. So we need to add one more point here, but this will be the last one, I promise. All right, so going to the Add Point Split Line tool or the X hotkey, right-click between point 1 and point B, so line 1B, right-click, and then choose Uniform Split, Number of Segments, 2, and then press OK. We'll call that point 4. All right, now let's go to the Internal Polygon tool, which is the G hotkey, and let's go ahead and click on that 4, and then double-click on the C, and that will be our pocket bag outline. And then we're also going to click on 1, and don't be fooled by all of these red points here. It's this blue point that we need to click on. That's the 1, and then double click on the 3, and that will be the line of the pocket. So now we just need to go to the curve tool or the edit curvature tool, the C hotkey, and then add in those curves. So we can use our 3D model as a reference. This one is the more important curve because this will end up being a style line on the dress. So make sure you really like this curve. This inside curve is not as important, but we really want a nice attractive curve for this one. I think that's cute. It kind of dips down a little bit and then goes up. I think that'll be nice. And then this curve down here, this is the pocket bag. So you just want to make sure it's not like so huge that like her phone will get lost. Her phone will get lost over here. Or it's not so small that it's like you can only fit maybe like a quarter in here. So this determines the size of the pocket. And that looks about good to me. I might kind of add a little bit more squareness to this pocket by using the edit pattern tool to manually adjust these Bezier handles, and actually think maybe make it a little bit bigger. We love big pockets. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. Okay, so super easy. Now we just need to trace off these pockets. So I'm going to go to the trace pattern tool or the I hotkey. First, I'm going to trace off the pocket facing. So that's this piece right here. And just pay close attention to all the lines that I'm selecting. This shape right here, this is the pocket facing. And I'm going to go ahead and right click, trace as pattern, and then just put him off to the side there. It has a little extra line here. You can go ahead and delete that if you would like. All right, now going back to the trace pattern tool, now we need to trace off the whole pocket, and that the hip pocket is going to be this line, this line, this line, this line, and this line. So this is the shape of the full pocket. And then right click, trace as pattern, and you can see it'll fit like right nicely inside the pocket facing, but we'll put it over here for now. Again, it traced all these extra lines. If you want to get rid of them, just unlock your baselines and select them and then delete them. And you can lock your baselines again using right up here in the 2D display options, lock baseline. Okay, so this is our pocket. This is our pocket facing. Now we actually need to cut away this section of the skirt to allow the pocket to be a pocket. So with the Z hotkey, I'm going to go ahead and right click internal line 1, 3. So that's this one right here. And then I'm just going to choose cut. And then I'm going to go to the A hotkey and just delete those extra pattern pieces. So we don't need them anymore. So now you can see that this piece actually goes underneath and that becomes the pocket. And then the facing goes right here. Which means we need to sew them together that way. So this can be a little bit tricky, so pay close attention. If I use my free sewing tool, I'm going to go ahead and sew my pocket facing to my pocket first. So that will be this line right here. I'm going to start this side and just keep going all the way around, leaving this line untouched. And then I'm going to sew that same line on the pocket, and that gets sewn together like that. Okay, so now we need to sew the pocket facing into the skirt. So that's this line right here, sewing from there to there, and then from there to there. Okay, so now my pocket facing knows where it needs to go. The pocket, however, needs, because it's now kind of taken on the role of this piece of the skirt that we just cut away, we need to actually sew the pocket from here to the bodice, from here to here. And then we need to sew this side from here to the back of the skirt, from there to there. Before we simulate, let's go ahead and make sure that our layers are accurate, and then, you know, kind of help these out a little bit. So this pocket needs to be closest to the body. So in the property editor, I want to make sure that's -2. Okay. And then the pocket facing will be the next layer out. So in the property editor, let's go to layer -1 and then okay. All right. So let's see what happens when we simulate now. All right. Help there. All right. That looks pretty good. Good job, pocket. So this is the pocket now. The pocket facing is like underneath there. That's the pocket facing. And everything looks like it's working the way it should. So let's go ahead and shift click these two pockets, Command or Control D to duplicate, put them on the other side and simulate. And then once everything is kind of happy and where it wants to be, go ahead and click all the pockets, and in the property editor, go ahead and turn it back to 0. That will make a more stable simulation. All right, we are almost done. The last thing we need to do is just add those cute gathers to the keyhole and to the center front of the skirt. So if you were sewing this in real life, you know, you wouldn't need to do this next step. We're just doing it so that we can visualize the gathers in the 3D window. So what we want to do is right click this keyhole line that the gathers will be on, and we're going to choose offset pattern outline, and let's choose direction extend, distance 0.125, number of offsets 1. Make sure you check create internal line, and then let's go ahead and choose perpendicular and okay. All right, now we're going to just right click this line still with the edit pattern tool, and then choose cut and sew. And that'll just give us like a little bit of a reference point so that when we spread this keyhole open, we can see how much it's going to gather. All right, now let's go ahead and go to the fullness line tool, which is right up here. And we're going to start by clicking on this center front waist point. And then we're going to click on this dart point on the waist. And at the top, we're going to also start at center front and then go all the way to the edge of the keyhole. And then this dialog box will automatically open. What we want to do is change the slash line length, and we want to double it. So right now it's 2.1. We want that to go ahead and be 4.2. And then for direction, you want it to extend out this way. It will make your center front not on grain, but you can always change that later if you don't like the way that looks. So go ahead and click OK. And then if you go ahead and simulate, you can see these gathers start to appear. Super cute, but also a little chonky right now because this is in super low res mode. So we'll check and make sure we like it once we have a high res garment. All right, and then we're going to do something very, very similar on the skirt. So still with the fullness line tool selected, click F, then click 2, then click B, then click 1. And then we're also going to double the slash line length. So right now it's 2.5. I'm going to type in 5. And we also want the direction extending and disrupting our center front line. And go ahead and click OK. And then simulate and see how it looks. All right, it's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and check it in the fabric that we want. So I'm just clicking fabric in the object browser, scrolling down and choosing preset. Let's do cotton voile. And oh, how cute. Okay, and then let's check it on high res garment. I'm going to go ahead and change this to, you know what, let's keep it on 5. Let's just see what happens. All right, there she is. I think that there's still some pulling here, and I think a lot of that has to do with the shape of the sleeve. That could use some finessing for sure, but she's pretty cute. From this point, I recommend following the fitting tutorial as well as the marking and preparing for export tutorial that's available on my YouTube channel. Those are just good processes to go through every time that you finish a garment in CLO and you're getting ready to make it in real life. So with that being said, thanks for following along. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments, and I look forward to our next tutorial.